Alright, so a couple weeks ago, my car broke down while we were coming back from Morongo, and I kind of just wanted to say a couple things or a few things about my car and how we ended up paying way, way, way more money than we actually bought it for. So I ended up buying this car like about over 2 years ago, and it was I at the time I had no clue what the difference between like a Toyota and like a Porsche was. Like literally I knew nothing about cars. So, obviously when selecting a car from my view, I literally when I like every single car like didn't look the same but like meant the same thing to me. Like it's just a car, it's just all it's gonna do is, transform me from one place to another. And now, obviously, I know the difference between every single car, or for the most part, like I understand like what a good car and a bad car is. But basically, my dad was the same way too. He didn't really care. He just wanted to get me a car that was cheap, and you know he didn't have to pay that much money for it. But it ended up not going so well in the long run because of the car that he bought, which I understand now, but didn't understand at the time, and I'm like it's a little unfortunate what ended up happening because I didn't know that. So the car that we bought was a 2008 Dodge Nitro, not a car that you've probably heard of before because for good reason. It's not a good car. you know there's only like 5 years of it, and it got discontinued after like 2012, I think. But either way, I would never recommend anyone buy this car unless it's you just like trying to destroy it. That's like the only good use for it, basically. But either way, Um, basically, when I first bought this car, like it was about $4,500 just for the car, and then registration was like 5,000. There was like $500 in tax because the car was put at $4,000, so 500 for tax and then 500 for registration and some other stuff. Can't remember, but so we ended up paying 5,000 basically for the car at the start. And within the first month of me driving it, I was coming home from school, just normally driving the car absolutely normally. And on a main street, my, like, I don't know what it's called. I think it's called like the gas pump or the fuel pump. I can't remember. Something with pump in it. And basically, that failed. So when I hit the gas, nothing would happen. So I was literally just in the middle of the street on a pretty big street, and there was like 10 cars behind me all honking, and I had my hazards on because I couldn't do anything. I literally could not. And so I ended up calling my dad. We ended up pulling the car over to the side, and once we did that, we got it towed to a mechanic, and we off the bat, just within less than a month, we ended up having to pay over $1,000 on that problem. And I think he ended up paying like a little bit more for like some other small things, and this all happened within less than a month. So that's the first problem. And after that, I ended up like driving just down like just around driving normally again with my friends, and we started hearing this like metal noise every time I like hit the brakes. So I ended up telling my dad about it. He took it to the mechanic. He said the brakes were like hitting some sort of metal thing that I forgot what it was called. He said it was like metal on metal, which is obviously a problem. So we ended up having to replace the brakes, and that was like $1,500, almost 2,000, I think. I don't know. I think it was over 1,500 though. But there you go. Already within less than 2 months, are you having to pay for you know $2,500 in damages or in repairs? So that's a huge problem. And this next thing that happened, I'll admit it was my fault, but that the reason why it's my fault is because I was like bored, and this car, like I had already realized that this car was not a good car. So I'm like, you know what, screw it. I don't really care too much about the car that much. So we ended up just driving to Gorman, and we ended up just messing around there, just having fun, and it was very fun. I'm not gonna lie, it was like a roller coaster. But other than that, we ended up causing some damages to the car because it's Gorman. It's like a freaking desert with a ton of bumps in it. So we ended up messing a couple things up, and the repairs that my dad took it to like get it repaired, the mechanic that he took it to was ended up being like $3,000. So my friends were saying like I told my friends, and they were like, "Boy, you're getting scammed." So I ended up telling my dad, and a day later, and my dad was claiming that the guy was going to get the parts in 2 weeks, and he said like they're super hard to find because it's an old car, and that was definitely not true. He definitely got lied to because when I went over there, he already had the parts, and I'm like, bro, can you like stop doing this right away? We don't need to repair it, and he's like, I already put some of the parts in, so I can't like. There's nothing I can do. You have to pay, and it ended up being like $2,000. 1,000. We ended up cutting off $1,000 for the parts that he didn't put in because he didn't put in all of them, and we ended up taking it to my friend's mechanic, and the $1,000 that he was talking about, it was actually over 1,000. I think it was like 1,200. My mechanic that my friends recommended me ended up fixing everything on the car for like $500. So basically, my dad was getting scammed, and I told him that, and he's like, okay, whatever, just take it to your friends, and I guess you can you know whenever there's a problem with the car, you can deal with it. And so that's what he said. And I ended up paying only $500 for $1,200 worth of damages and more because this was like a month after. I ended up repairing the thing that needed to be repaired like by myself for like $50. So I ended up saving a lot of money that way because I became the mechanic for like a day. But there was other problems with the car that came up after, and we only ended up paying like $500 for those problems too. After that, this next thing was also my fault, so I'll take the blame again. But after this, I was like, I want to get rid of this car because there's so many problems with it that I've been dealing with, and I just wanted to get rid of it. And my dad was being stingy, and he wanted to keep the car because he said it was my car, and I'm gonna do what I want with it. So we're gonna keep it. But basically, what this was is I was like, messing around doing donuts in like this private parking lot that my friends claimed to be, because they claimed that there wasn't gonna be anybody that arrested us because cops went by there all the time, saw people doing donuts, and did not care. And so I was just doing donuts there normally. Like then there were two other people doing it with me, and I ended up being the unlucky one to get caught, and I ended up getting the car impounded. So they were obviously wrong, and that happened. And the impound fee was like $2,000. So you know, just keep adding money onto this car. And I told my dad, there's no point to keep this car. We might as well just buy a new car that's actually reliable. He said, nope, we're keeping the car. And so there you go. And there were more problems that, kept coming up after that. So the next problem was the cats. The cats ended up like, we need to get it smogged, and I guess the cats were bad. So we ended up getting those replaced and a couple other things, and that ended up being $3,000, which my friends claimed that was a scam, and I honestly they're probably right because we searched up like cats for a Dodge Nitro. They're well under $1,000. So the labor must have been like Jesus. Can't imagine. But if I took it to my mechanic that I knew, it would have been way cheaper. That's all I gotta say. And then oil was very expensive with this car. We had to replace like every 3,000, 4,000 miles. And I also went through oil really fast, so I ended up paying extra oil on the side to keep pouring more in. Because man, this thing drained oil. I think it went through like a whole gallon within like less than 1,000 miles. So that's a lot. And we also gas was really bad on this car. MPG was like 16 on the streets, 22 on the freeway, which is pretty bad in my opinion. And that drained a lot of my money because I was like freaking filling up my tank for like $40 every week, basically, even though I didn't drive that much. But yeah, this car was not a very good car. It needed to be well maintained, and there was a ton of other stuff that was wrong with this car. I think the radiator needed to be replaced. I think like the power steering pump needed to be replaced. There was something else that needed. There was a couple other things that needed to be replaced, and then the tires needed to be rotated or something. I don't know because we took it to like an oil shop, and they're saying there were a ton of problems. There was like one of the brake lights, or one of the brake lights was like broken. So just a ton of like problems with the car, and eventually when we came back from Morongo, it ended up breaking down finally. And I told my dad, I'm like, Dad, I'm done with this car. I hate this car so much. I don't want to deal with repairing it anymore. I'm broke because of all the money I spent on this car. I'm done with it. I'm gonna go with my mom and try and find a new car. But yeah, basically, like I would never recommend this car to anybody. If you're trying to save money, just go with a Prius or something. go with like like a Accord or Camry, Civic, whatever. Just Toyota or Honda if you want to save money on like gas and like you want a reliable car. But definitely never buy a Dodge Nitro. So that's about it. Thank you for watching.